Okay. Yes, we're live. And hello, welcome to the fourth episode of Spilling the Green Beans, where I share with you my green secrets to inspire you to start growing your own vegetables. I'm your host, Emily. I'm the creator of Easy Urban Gardening, the system for growing your own vegetables on a balcony or terrace in town. Thank you for spending time with me today. Growing vegetables can seem daunting and hard work. I share with you my green secrets, the most crucial techniques to make it fun and easy, and you'll also learn how to take advantage of the broad health benefits of gardening and how to cook a delicious meal with your own vegetables. I will be spilling the green beans. And in this episode, I share with you the 5 most common mistakes new gardeners make. Go and have a look online to learn about gardening, and you find article after article after article about all the mistakes to avoid as a beginning gardener. I honestly find that quite daunting and even a little bit demotivating. But it is. You will find endless pages of lists with 5, 7, 8, 9, 10, all the way up to 21 or even 30 commonly made mistakes. So to have you not so demotivated as I in the beginning actually was by looking too much on the internet, I am going to make it easy for you. And the first thing that is really, really nice, because the Easy Urban Gardening system already saves you from all the mistakes a beginning gardener, according to the internet, could do when it comes to digging, the soil, the tools, and the weeding. So they're kind of like done and dusted already. And why? First, because you don't dig in an easy urban garden. I mean, it is a raised bed. It's a raised garden bed, so absolutely no need for digging. And you also have it like it's compact, it's kind of small, so you don't walk in between your vegetables. So you never step on the soil where your vegetables actually grow. So also no need to churn up the soil or rake or other physically hard work that everybody associates with a garden. Second, you make the perfect soil mixture yourself. So you don't have to know anything about fertilizing, about mulching, etc. of the soil. You need some good compost, and that is it. Easy again, no? And for details on how to do that or how to actually make that soil mixture, you can watch back episode number 2. I tell everything about it in that episode. Then what else did we say? Tools. You don't need many tools, nor a shed to actually store them, because they're simple and they're tiny. Let me show you what I have. You need a little trowel, something like this. That's it. So I put my hand on it so you can see how small it actually is. Then you need a little pair of scissors. I use a scissor like this. So it's tiny. Actually, I bought this one in the sewing collection of the department store here in town. That's very bad, but it's important that it is small scissors, because as I will discuss with you over the next episodes, this one you will actually use to thin the tiny little seedlings. So it's nice and easy to have a tiny pair of scissors. Then you need a big bucket. I'm not going to show you that because, as you see, we're back indoors as it is snowing incredibly hard outside. But a big bucket, it can be a normal 10-liter bucket that you also use for mopping the floor, or an even bigger plastic bucket. But a nice big bucket of at least 10 liters comes very handy in an easy urban garden. Then you need a small cup. I have a small plastic cup like this. It's simple, it's plastic drink cup. Nothing fancy. And what I love to have are a couple of plastic, which of course I forgot to take out of my cupboard to show you, but kind of like a plastic container, like from a takeaway meal or a Tupperware container, something like that. And then some colored pencils. Actually, you can also do it with just one gray pencil, a normal one, but I like to use the colored ones because it really visualizes your garden once you start planning it. And then it's a little extra. It's optional because of course you already have little scissors, but a mini pruner could become really handy. I have one like this. It's a small, tiny little pruner, but it's optional, but it can be really handy if you can find one, or maybe you already have one. And finally, weeding is an absolute rarity in an easy urban garden because you make your own soil mixture and there are no seeds or weeds or anything like that in it to begin with. Second, you raised your bed because you're working on a terrace or a balcony, so no chance of weeds coming like from underneath into your garden. But of course the wind or an overflying bird or something can drop a seed or two, three. So really sometimes you do have some weeds. It's always really just a few. But the other nice thing is because as we discussed, we are planting like in a grid system, and it is so everything that is out of the ordinary of your grid has to be taken out of your garden. So 90% chance that is a weed. So you can recognize it super easy. It can also maybe be a seedling of a spilled seed that pops up, but it doesn't really matter. Everything that is outside of the grid structure is going to be removed. So super easy. You don't have to study, I don't know how many resources about what is a weed and what is a plant and how do I recognize them and how do the different leaves look like or anything. Nope. Super easy. You planted, you sowed in a grid. Any tiny little plant that comes up outside of that grid, you just take it out. And for that, you have your fingers. Those are also very, very handy tools. So those are really always big, the mistakes that are like in big numbers represented in all those lists we talked about. So we can skip all those. And then, unfortunately, we still have a few mistakes you also want to avoid to get the best out of your easy urban garden from the very beginning. And I narrowed those mistakes down to just 5. So the 5 most common mistakes by beginning gardeners, even when they garden according to the easy urban gardening system. So these ones you really want to avoid. So let me discuss those 5 mistakes with you. First one, it's a big one. Do not place your garden out of sight. You really don't want to do that. Because just think, how often don't people have their garden, I don't know, somewhere in the back of a small corner all the way back in the garden, or maybe behind the garage or behind a shed, or even worse, they have the allotment garden at the complete other side of town. um, it's not a good, I think it's a really, really big mistake, because a garden in plain sight is a garden not forgotten. And the most important thing of a successful garden is that you pay attention to it. And even though that within the Easy Urban Gardening system, we don't need to pay more than 5 minutes a day of attention to our garden for maintenance and everything, but still, you do have to look at it and look after it. So with a garden near your kitchen door or kitchen window, or maybe absolutely, like, the main entrance to your terrace or your balcony, that's kind of like a good location for your garden. If I compare to where my garden is, it's not at the kitchen side of our apartment, because of course the kitchen is facing north, and that is not a good site for the garden. If I would put my garden on my kitchen balcony, it would have maybe 4 hours of sunlight in summer. So in winter it would not see any sun, and in spring and autumn also just hardly. So it is not at the kitchen side, but it is near, it's vis-a-vis from our patio, where we do have in winter our lounge set is there, and in summer we actually have our outdoors dining table there. And when we sit there, you can't help but facing the gardens. So that is a really, really good idea to have them in plain sight, according to your kind of like normal daily pattern. And so why is that so important? Because if you see it all the time, it is preventing you from many, many other common mistakes. Because if you see it every day, you won't overlook thirsty plants. So you won't miss out on plants ready to harvest. You won't miss out on a plant that maybe the night before it has been a little bit more windy or even stormy, and you're kind of your little tomato bush is in the morning is hanging like this. And you will see it immediately, so you can give it a little stick or a little support or whatever. So if you see it every day, you won't overlook many little things that over time can become a really big problem. Then the second often made mistake is beginning too big. So don't start a too big garden. I know it is so easy to do because you're super enthusiastic. You're dreaming of that beautiful green, lush vegetable garden and self-sufficiency. But if you start off too big in the beginning, you are actually setting yourself up for disappointments and many, many other problems. Like a too big garden is a recipe for planting too much, for planting too close together because you want to cramp in so much, or you want to so much. And with that, you actually invite diseases and pests into your garden, which we don't want. So do yourself a favor and start off with a small garden. And what is a small garden in my perspective? It's anything between 60 by 60 centimeters and say 120 by 60 or 90 centimeters, something like that. And if you have a little bit more space, 120 by 120 centimeters square garden would also still be a small garden to start off with. And you can always expand later. And especially within Easy Urban Gardening, you can expand during the season. If you start off like in spring this year, you start off with a garden of 120 by 60, or maybe 2 of the raised beds of 120 by 60. You don't have to wait until next year spring before you can expand your garden. You can easily drop in an extra bed. I don't know, maybe you have a little corner where during the year you think like, oh, that would be nice, some green there, the sun is really out there, it would be an ideal spot. You just put in an extra box of a 60 by 60, maybe because that is what fits, or a 90 by 30 or whatever. And you just put it in, you set it up, even when it's July or August or September or October, doesn't really matter. You just set it up, you build it, you set it up, and you can start growing. So don't think, if I don't start with the maximum size I think I want to have, or I think I can handle, I am losing so much time or so much opportunity. It's not true. You better start off small, get the hang of it, get your routine of gardening, get the system really in your fingers, and then expand after a couple of months, after half a year, or next year. Doesn't really matter. You can easily build it up, but do it slowly. It really, really, really is a better idea. You keep more fun, you will be more successful, and you will have a better idea of how incredibly much you can actually harvest with this system of a small space. Promised? Good. Then the third mistake. And maybe this is one, I think this is the most fatal mistake of beginning gardeners. And that is not making a plan, not having a planting plan or a sowing plan. Even if you choose the ideal spot inside, inside, that you can see it all the time. It has the perfect amount of sunlight. So it is absolutely perfect for your garden, and you contain your enthusiasm by making a manageable small garden. You can still get completely overwhelmed if you don't make a plan. And overwhelm is not a good thing, because you will end up with maybe only half or maybe only a quarter of the yields that are possible. So a plan really helps you to keep oversight, to make the most out of your space, to make sure you grow what you really like to eat. With that, it helps you to prevent food waste, and it does keep gardening fun. It does keep gardening fun during the season and before your actual growing season really starts, because making a plan in early spring is the perfect build up to a real gardening season. And it kind of like also already satisfies those first gardening, tingling butterflies. Oh, it's February. Oh, it's February. I could maybe start. Maybe not. But with making a plan, you kind of like calm down your itchy enthusiasm to start, and it really, really, really makes your life so much easier and fun during the rest of the year. Then, as a fourth mistake, I want to address the problem of planting too soon or too late. And this mistake, of course, is very related to making no plan, because that is the first hurdle to take to avoid this mistake. But even with a plan, it can be very tempting to start too many of your veggies indoors. Everybody is always talking around you, maybe about preceding indoors, about growing those seedlings and then transplanting them into the garden. I really, really, really want to urge you to sow as many vegetables as possible directly in your outdoor garden. Of course, which vegetables those are is depending on where you live. But really try to sow as many vegetables as possible just directly in your outdoor garden. It's easier. The success of actually growing big and strong and healthy vegetables is bigger, and it's so much easier because transplanting is not the easiest thing when it comes to gardening. Sowing is a lot easier, I can tell you. But of course, there is always an exception to the rule, because summer vegetables like tomatoes and cucumbers are not possible in most areas to sow directly outside and still having the big yields that those plants can actually produce. So those you have to start indoors, and then you have to nurture them and you have to grow them up. You have to replant them maybe once or twice, and you have to really take care of them. And then in the end, normally, like most areas in Europe, you bring them outside then as of like between the second half of May and half June. So say somewhere between the 15th of May and roughly the 15th of June. But for those as well, you should start sowing them as late as possible indoors, because it's always tricky to grow really strong, healthy plants indoors. So even there, try not to start growing your tomatoes in early February and then think you can manage to nurture them to big, strong, healthy plants until the 15th of May. That's not a good idea. And of course, a sowing calendar can be a very, very big help here. It's something like, I have as well for my students. I make this one is specifically for over winter and spring vegetables. So, but that can be a really, really big help to have a sowing calendar that tells you what is the ideal time to sow your vegetables. And then the fifth and last mistake is a mistake very close to my heart, because it is the biggest mistake I made too in the beginning. And I want to help you to avoid it, because it really takes the fun out of gardening. And that mistake is being too hard on yourself. So try not to be too hard on yourself. Try really to step into your gardening adventure and your gardening journey with the attitude and the promise to yourself that you take your garden as it comes. Take it at the pace of Mother Earth. Go with the flow of her timeline. Don't try to speed things up. Don't try to manipulate how it just goes. Take it as it comes. If the weather is a little bit colder, it will take a little bit longer. If the weather is really wet, it can take a little bit longer. So it is really, really important to allow yourself to make your garden that space, that kind of like safe haven where you can unwind and kind of disconnect from the rush of all day. and really step into this peaceful, quiet, slow, but beautiful and promising little world. Yes, can you promise me that, please? It really, really, really makes things so much more fun. And then with being too hard on yourself comes the second element. And that is, it's really important to realize that absolutely every garden has yellow leaves, has plants with leaves that have little holes in it. We have crooked plants, etc. When you look in close up, no matter what pictures in magazines make you believe, if you really look into a garden, every single garden has these imperfections, these flaws, these mistakes, these whatever you want to call it. It's just part of it. It's just part of it. So, what is a good way to kind of overcome this being too hard on yourself if it comes to the picture perfect garden? Try to start taking pictures of your own garden. Make it kind of like a new hobby of taking pictures of your own garden. For me, once I started doing that, it was kind of like a revelation, because it showed me that with a camera, you can always find an angle, find the lighting, or in the worst case, afterwards, even find a filter that makes your garden look picture perfect. And that's how they end up in those magazines. Although I honestly believe that there is a lot of filtering of those pictures. But honestly, if you start taking pictures of your own garden, you will see that it isn't that difficult to have a picture perfect garden in a picture. And besides that, let's be honest, a crooked carrot is just as tasteful as a straight one. And a ripe tomato with a spot is still super tasty, as is a curved cucumber. So also, don't put too much weight on whether your vegetables look picture perfect or not. They are grown with love. They are grown with respect for the environment, for their pace, and they are delicious no matter how they look like. So please, be kind to yourself. Of course, always, but for sure in your first few years in gardening, and look for the beauty there is and be grateful for the yields you get. Thank you for spending time with me in the garden. And did you enjoy this episode of Spilling the Green Beans? Then please share, subscribe, and give a YouTube review so more people can enjoy the show. I see you in the next episode. Bye!